And I want you guys simply to create a, I guess, semi-complex form. And you can do this in 2-point perspective. And you can start off with the base first. Actually, with this one, we'll do something fun with this, but we'll keep the shadows kind of in the same vein. So we'll do one object, we'll create one object, and you guys will do the shadows for the object. So we're going to create an arch with this. We're just going to create a simple archway. So if you didn't remember how to create an arch, so I'm going to create this in the quarters. I know that's what it is. So I can find the midpoint. Okay, and I'm going to do it one more time because I want this kind of thin. There. So I'm going to do this on both sides. I mean, you don't have to do this if you don't want a fat arch. I want a fat arch, but if you don't want a fat arch, you can have a thin one. I'm going to do something like that. And I have a midpoint here, so that works good. And then I'm going to pick a point right here. It's totally arbitrary. And I'm simply going to connect it like this and like this. I'm going to bring it all the way down. But you know, I have some of these guidelines here that I could possibly use. To keep it as symmetrical as possible in 2-point perspective. But I also can use these, and I know we haven't really talked about these before, but these are French curves, or this is a French curve. So a French curve, theoretically, can create any curve that you need. So if I need to, actually I'll flip this over. So if I need to create that curve, I can actually do something like this. If I flip it around, you can see it fits that curve almost perfect. Okay, so I can use that. French curves work great. Okay, so there's my arch on this side, but this has a thickness to it. So I need to create the full arch. So I'm going to erase some of this business here, and I'll show you how to transfer it to the back, and it's really, really easy. I don't need all this business anymore, except for this midpoint. But as you guys know, in perspective, you need to draw all 6 sides. Extremely helpful. Okay, there's the basic box, but now I have this arch to portray as well. So I'm simply going to draw the guidelines in for now. Here and here. This midpoint in here, I can transfer it to those guidelines that I have. I don't have to figure it out on that side at all, except just know where this wall, where the arch will begin here. I'll do the same thing on this side. Okay, so the arch begins here and here on this opposite side. But I need to figure out where this midpoint is. So I just transfer all this information to the other side. I don't have to, find midpoints or anything like that, like all these divisions. It's already done once, and that's all there ever needs to be. Okay, now I have this. Okay, so here's the apex for this arch. And now, if you look at this, I can use the same curve for this one. Okay, that looks pretty accurate. And now I'll use this one. I'll flip it over and see if I can do one similar to this. It's probably going to be a little bit closer to this. There. You don't have to create a Gothic arch like this. It could be totally round if you want. I'll do this in blue to define the basic corners. What I just showed you is some basic stuff in 2-point perspective, which all of you can easily do. You don't have to use French curves to get it accurate. You can freehand it. It's a little bit tougher, but you can freehand it. Now, with this, you will do the basic shadows for this box, doing the same method that we've used before. But do the outer structure first. Don't worry about the arch. Don't let that psych you out. That part is actually really easy to do. So I'll do the basic structure for you. So here is the basic shadow for this structure. This is just the outer contours of it. And this is based on what we talked about before. Pretty easy. And I'll actually do this in blue. And when you have something that has a dynamic appearance to it, like an archway, the basic shadows that you can create when the light source is parallel with the horizon line, it really comes to life. So I'm going to erase some of these guidelines here. I don't think we really need too much, just to clarify some of this busyness in here. There we go. So here's some key things to think about when you do a shadow for something like this. Number one, you need to be able to get this shape down here. That's your job. Get this shape down here on the ground. And it is not really that difficult. But you have to do one side at a time. This actually has some form to it. So one of the things you need to think about is what will actually be seen. Will this actually be seen? This edge here, you have to think about, how the light is actually hitting this. So chances are you will have to do the shadows for not only this back side, but also this front too. All right, so let me do the shadow for this back arch. So I'm grabbing this corner, coming out, and I'm using this edge here because that's where the arch actually starts. Then I'm going to bring this light source, the light all the way down at a 45-degree angle here. Okay, so let me erase some of this, or just make it a little bit lighter. Now the arch. We do the same thing. We have a post here. We already have an imaginary post that we can use. So we do the same thing. We bring this out here, like that. Bring a 45-degree angle down from the top of that post, or the top of the arch rather. Okay, and we have something like this. This point is represented here. This point is represented here. Now we just need to connect these two. So this is where this would come in handy. It's real light, but you guys can actually see the potential of what this is. You can actually see this in here. And we're going to do the opposite with this one here. We already have the shadow for this here. We're going to do the shadow for this one. And then connect the two. So this is really easy. This part comes all the way to here. So the shadow for this edge here is actually right here. It's actually going to be, excuse me, a little bit more dynamic than that because it's not going to show such a blunt corner here. It's probably going to be closer to that coming down. Now that we have this, so that's, now if you have issues with, like, if you don't have a French curve, you don't need a French curve. So let's not connect these two right now. Let's keep these two separate. Okay, let's just deal with the structure first. Let me show you how you guys can actually get this very, very accurate. Okay, so we already have this corner here, but in order to draw this curve, that could be a challenge. It can be a challenge, but if you have imaginary posts created, like I can create a post here, going up to the arch, I'm going along this line. I create another one here, and I can actually use those to help me draw the arch. So I'm gonna draw this one first. Here's my 45. Actually, I'm gonna make this a little bit longer. Not my 45, my 180. Here's my 45 coming all the way down to here. At this point here, I'm gonna do the same thing for this vertical. I have an imaginary post. I have this coming all the way down to here. So let's look at what we have. This point is represented here. This point is represented here. This point is represented here. Now I just need to connect the dots. 1, 2, and 3. Exactly where my French curve was, by the way. And that's what's great about French curves. And we can do the same thing with this side. This side's a little bit special because it's a little bit, you have this weird curve in here. I'm going to see how accurate I am. So I'm going to create a vertical here. I'm going to create a vertical here. Now I'm going to put one a little bit closer in here. Yes, it does. It can get busy, but once it's done, it's like wonderful. Oh, I still need this. Okay, so I have this 90. So it's 180. Oh, horizontal line. Here's my 45. Right here. So I wasn't inaccurate. I had a feeling I was going to be inaccurate. I have another one here. Okay, that one is hitting here. This one is hitting right here. And I drew one actually in here too. This one is hitting right here. Okay, so now I can actually connect the dots. I'm not going to use my French curve for this because it's not going to be accurate enough. Well, actually, it could be. Let's see if I can actually find that curve. Let me see. Oh yeah, it's represented here. Oh, it's a little bit too sharp. I'll just freehand it. It's so small. There it is. Right there. Okay, so here is my arch for the backside. Okay, now we know that light is actually hitting this whole thing. It's coming down through the arch. We know that the inside of the arch, which is right here. Actually, let me make this a little bit darker. Here. Oh, not that dark. It in blue. We know that the inside of this arch here is getting light. Okay, especially if it's coming down at a 45-degree angle. So we needed to actually create the inside of this arch just to see how much is going to be seen and how much is not going to be seen. Right here, we know that there's a shadow that's going to be created right in here as well. So let's see how much of this arch would actually be seen. I'm only going to do the shadow for this corner, or I'm sorry, for this here and this midpoint, and we'll see how much was actually going to be seen. Let me erase some of this business so we don't need it anymore. Just keep it lighter. We already see the arch. Okay. So we have this imaginary post here. And we also have this post right here. This post does that. We know that light is hitting this corner. So this corner is this point represents this corner. Let's figure out where this is represented. That's going to allow us to see how much of the shadow is actually being seen in the back and on the front. And now we have this right here. Because this point here represents this apex right up here. And this is represented here. So we know that is creating, those areas are creating shadows. So if we create, in order to get this curve correct, if we were to create a couple of imaginary posts, I guess one here and another one here, kind of dividing this area. Okay, have it divided into thirds, not perfectly, but just, it doesn't have to be perfect. So I have a horizontal, have my 45. This corner, this point here represents this point here. And this part here is represented right here. So I can freehand it, or I can use my French curve. Okay. So let's see what is actually being seen here and here. And there's a shadow right here. Okay, so this part of the arch is not actually being seen at all. Now, why did I have to do all of this? Is just to see how much is actually being seen. And it's incredibly important that we do that. We can't do a shadow for this because it's not being seen at all. So we know that light is hitting here. So this is the apex for this. So we just simply need to connect these two like that. Let's see. You know what? Better than that. Let's see where it would actually be, and that'll give us a guide. Put this here. I'll put this here. Okay, this would actually be like that. So here's our shadow for it. So the reason why I showed you this at the end of this day is to show you that sometimes when we have something complex, sometimes we have to go through the process of showing the shadow, showing as much of the shadow as possible, just so we can wrap our heads around it, just to get something accurate, just to show this little part in here. Sometimes when you have like a complex still life that you guys are drawing, it has these really strange shadows that you're drawing. And you do sighting techniques, you try to get the shape as accurate as possible. You're looking at positive, negative space. You may not understand the positive, negative space. You just know that it's there. You know that it's working to your advantage, and you're using sighting techniques to get everything as accurate as possible. And you have this weird shape in here. And now you know why the shape looks like that. So mathematically, it can be created. Yes. Do you have to do all this business, all of this? Yes, you do. Even though this arch in here, I only use this much of it, you still use it. You still need to figure it out, because you're not always going to have shadows that are parallel with the horizon. Sometimes you're going to have shadows like in positive sun, and we're going to do positive sun on Tuesday. When it comes with positive sun, we still have to go through this. We still have to go through this process, because then we're going to have shadows come in this direction, so or in this direction. So, in any case, with this, at least